Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez walked into that CNN studio thinking she was untouchable. 5.8 million Twitter followers, 8.7 million on Instagram, every progressive rally chanting her name, every late-night show begging for her appearance. She'd built an empire on taking down establishment figures with perfectly timed tweets and viral moments. Today would be no different. Today, she'd destroy Tulsi Gabbard on live television. Or so she thought. What AOC didn't know was that the woman sitting across from her wasn't just another politician. Lieutenant Colonel Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, had spent the previous week doing something AOC had never experienced: actual preparation. Not social media strategy, not soundbite rehearsal, real preparation. The kind that involves classified intelligence files, ethics committee reports, and federal investigation documents. The kind that can end careers. In 45 minutes, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would leave that studio a broken politician, her credibility shattered, her brand destroyed, her future uncertain. All because she made one catastrophic mistake. She attacked a combat veteran who had receipts for everything, and I mean everything, before we witnessed the complete annihilation of one of America's most famous politicians. Smash that like button. Because what you're about to see is the most brutal political takedown in television history. A decorated Iraq War veteran with 21 years of military service systematically dismantling a social media star who thought performance could beat substance. Subscribe right now, because this story proves that when warriors face frauds, there's only one possible outcome: total victory. The morning of December 15th, 2025 started like any other Sunday in Washington, D.C. Cold, gray, politicians preparing their weekly media appearances, staff coordinating talking points, the usual choreographed dance of political theater that Americans had grown tired of watching. But today would be different. Today, two women would sit across from each other on CNN's flagship Sunday show, and only one would walk away with her reputation intact. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had been planning this moment for weeks. Her communications team had crafted the perfect strategy: attack Tulsi Gabbard's loyalty, question her fitness for leading America's intelligence agencies, paint her as a Trump puppet who'd compromised national security, get the clip to go viral, dominate the news cycle for days, energize the progressive base heading into the 2026 midterms. It was textbook AOC political theater. Dramatic, emotional, perfectly calibrated for maximum social media engagement. She'd even coordinated her outfit for the appearance: a designer blazer that photographed well on camera, statement jewelry that said "powerful woman," makeup applied with the precision of someone who understood lighting and camera angles better than most Hollywood actresses. Every detail mattered, because this wasn't about policy discussion. This was about creating a moment, a viral clip that would define the narrative. AOC had become a master of these manufactured confrontations. Staged outrage, perfectly timed tears, moral indignation delivered with the confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences for anything. In the green room before the show, she scrolled through Twitter on her phone. Her latest post had 47,000 likes in 3 hours, a quote about holding Trump appointees accountable. Her followers were already primed, already expecting her to deliver a performance, already ready to share whatever clip she gave them. "This is going to be perfect," she told her chief of staff, who was reviewing talking points one last time. "Gabbard can't fight back. She's bound by intelligence protocols. She can't reveal classified information. She'll have to sit there and take it while I expose her as a fraud." Her chief of staff nodded, though something in his expression suggested less confidence than AOC felt. "Just remember, stick to the talking points about her Russia comments. Don't make it personal. Keep it about policy and judgment." But AOC wasn't really listening. She was already envisioning the headlines, the tweets, the cable news panels discussing her powerful takedown of Trump's DNI. She'd done this dozens of times before, called out powerful people, gone viral, faced zero consequences. Why would today be any different? 3 floors below, in a different green room, Tulsi Gabbard sat in complete silence. No phone scrolling, no staff coordinating sound bites, no nervous energy. Just a decorated combat veteran reviewing a folder marked with official classification stamps. The folder was thick, detailed, damning. Inside were ethics committee findings, federal investigation reports, financial disclosures, and patterns of behavior that painted a very different picture of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez than the one her social media followers believed. Tulsi had requested these documents specifically. As Director of National Intelligence, she had access to information that most politicians never see. Not classified intelligence about foreign threats, just basic federal records, ethics investigations, House disbursement reports, financial tracking data. The kind of information that reveals who politicians really are when the cameras aren't rolling. And what Tulsi had found about AOC was fascinating. A consistent pattern of ethical violations, questionable financial decisions, and a lifestyle that didn't match disclosed income. All publicly available information, all documented by official federal agencies, all completely at odds with AOC's carefully crafted image as a champion of working people. Tulsi had served in Iraq. She'd treated wounded soldiers under fire. She'd earned a combat medical badge, one of the Army's most respected decorations. She knew what real danger looked like, what real sacrifice meant, what authentic service to country required, and she knew political theater when she saw it. AOC was about to learn the difference between performing activism and living it. A production assistant knocked on the door. "Director Gabbard, we're ready for you in 5 minutes." Tulsi closed the folder, stood, and smoothed her jacket with the same calm precision she'd carried into combat zones. Her expression revealed nothing. No anger, no anticipation, just the focused calculation of a soldier preparing for battle. Because that's what this was, not a political debate, not a cable news discussion. A battle. And Tulsi Gabbard had never lost a battle she was prepared for. The walk from the green room to the studio felt longer than usual for both women, though for very different reasons. AOC practically bounced down the hallway, energized by adrenaline and confidence. Her communications director whispered last-minute encouragements. "You've got this. Remember, stay on message. Make it about Trump's judgment. Don't let her redirect." AOC nodded, barely hearing the words. She was already performing in her mind, already seeing the viral moment she was about to create. Tulsi walked alone. No entourage, no handlers, just a woman who'd commanded soldiers in combat moving with purposeful calm. Staff members instinctively moved aside as she passed. There was something in her bearing that commanded respect without demanding it. The kind of presence that can't be manufactured or performed. It's earned through decades of actual service. The CNN studio was set up for confrontation. 2 chairs positioned at angles. Multiple cameras to capture reactions. Jake Tapper's desk positioned between them, though everyone knew he'd be mostly irrelevant to what was about to happen. This was about 2 women, 2 completely different approaches to politics, 2 incompatible visions of leadership. And America was about to watch them collide. AOC entered first, waving to the small studio audience. Smiling, confident. She took her seat and immediately began checking her appearance in the monitor, adjusting her blazer, touching her hair, making sure everything looked perfect for the cameras, because appearance mattered to her. Image was everything. The performance was the point. Tulsi entered without fanfare. No waves, no smiles for cameras. She simply walked to her chair, sat down with military posture, and waited. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. Her expression was neutral but alert. She looked like someone preparing to deliver a briefing, not engage in political combat, which, in a way, was exactly what she was about to do. Jake Tapper reviewed his notes one final time. He could feel the tension in the studio. His producers had specifically arranged this pairing because they wanted fireworks. AOC had been publicly criticizing Tulsi's appointment for months. Tulsi had remained silent, refusing to engage in media feuds. This would be the first time they'd sat face-to-face since Tulsi became DNI. Everyone expected drama. What they didn't expect was complete annihilation. "We're live in 30 seconds, the floor director announced. AOC took a deep breath, centering herself for her performance. Tulsi didn't change expression, didn't adjust her posture, just waited with the patience of someone who'd learned to stay calm under actual enemy fire. And we're live in 5, 4, 3. The floor director's hand counted down the final seconds silently. Jake Tapper looked into camera one with his practiced professional warmth. Good morning and welcome to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. Today we have a fascinating discussion lined up between two of the most prominent women in American politics, each representing very different perspectives on intelligence, national security, and America's role in the world. He gestured to his left. Joining me is Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat from New York's 14th District, a leading voice in progressive politics and a member of the House Oversight Committee. AOC smiled at the camera, her practiced media persona fully engaged. And Tapper continued, gesturing right. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, former Congresswoman from Hawaii, Army Reserve Lieutenant Colonel, and combat veteran with 2 deployments to the Middle East. Tulsi nodded once, professional but not warm. Director Gabbard, let's start with you, Tapper began. The Trump administration has implemented significant changes to border security protocols over the past year. As DNI, you've been involved in intelligence assessments of border threats. Can you give us your evaluation of the current situation? It was a softball question. Standard opening. Get everyone comfortable before the confrontation. Tulsi answered with military precision. Jake, the intelligence community's assessment is clear. We face persistent threats from transnational criminal organizations, human trafficking networks, and drug cartels exploiting vulnerabilities in our border security infrastructure. The changes implemented over the past year have improved intelligence sharing between agencies and enhanced our ability to identify threats before they cross the border. We're seeing measurable improvements in interdiction rates and reduced gaps in surveillance coverage. Professional, factual, boring television but substantive policy discussion. Exactly what a DNI should sound like. Tapper turned to AOC. Congresswoman, you've been one of the most vocal critics of the administration's border policies. What's your response to Director Gabbard's assessment? This wasn't AOC's opening. She'd been waiting for this moment, time to perform. Jake, with all due respect to Director Gabbard, what we're seeing at the border isn't enhanced security. It's enhanced cruelty. Her voice carried practiced emotion. Moral outrage delivered like a well-rehearsed monologue. We're separating families. We're detaining children. We're treating desperate people fleeing violence and poverty like criminals. And the intelligence community has been weaponized to support these policies instead of questioning them. She paused, letting the accusation hang in the air. Then she turned to look directly at Tulsi instead of the camera. A calculated move. Make it personal. Make it confrontational. And frankly, I question whether the people leading our intelligence agencies have the judgment and integrity to give us accurate assessments when they're more interested in serving a political agenda than serving the truth. There it was, the personal attack, delivered with AOC's trademark combination of moral certainty and dramatic flair. The studio audience shifted uncomfortably. Jake Tapper's eyebrows raised slightly. This had escalated quickly. Tulsi's expression didn't change. She sat perfectly still for exactly 3 seconds, not reacting, not interrupting, just processing, calculating. In those 3 seconds, every combat veteran watching recognized what was happening. AOC had just made a fatal tactical error. She'd attacked someone who couldn't be rattled, someone who'd faced actual danger, someone who knew how to respond to hostile fire. When Tulsi finally spoke, her voice was quiet, controlled, with an edge of steel underneath. Congresswoman, are you questioning my judgment and integrity as Director of National Intelligence? It was a clarifying question. Military tactics. Make the opponent commit to their position before responding. Force them to own their attack before you destroy them for it. AOC, encouraged by what she mistook for defensiveness, pressed forward. I'm questioning whether someone with your record should be in charge of America's intelligence agencies. You've appeared on shows that platform Russian propaganda. You've met with dictators. You've consistently opposed American leadership in supporting democratic allies. And now you're using intelligence assessments to justify cruel immigration policies. She was building momentum, her voice rising with practiced passion. "So yes, Director Gabbard, I am questioning your judgment. I'm questioning your loyalty to American values. And I'm questioning whether you're a MAGA puppet who's compromised the integrity of our entire intelligence community." The words MAGA puppet echoed through the studio. AOC had crossed a line. She'd gone from policy criticism to personal accusation, from questioning decisions to questioning loyalty. On live television, in front of millions of viewers, with no evidence, just performance, just theater, just the kind of viral moment she'd built her career on creating. What she didn't realize was that Tulsi had been waiting for exactly this moment, hoping for it, even, because you can't respond with overwhelming force until someone attacks first. And AOC had just launched the first strike. Tulsi reached down beside her chair where she'd placed a leather briefcase. The movement was deliberate, unhurried. She lifted the briefcase onto her lap, opened it with a soft click, and withdrew a folder. The folder was marked with official House of Representatives seals, Ethics Committee documentation, public records, not classified intelligence, just facts. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez," Tulsi began, her voice still quiet but now carrying absolute authority, "since you've chosen to question my integrity on national television, I think it's appropriate that we discuss yours." AOC's confident smile faltered slightly. This wasn't in the script. Politicians weren't supposed to hit back like this. They were supposed to deflect, redirect, appeal to civility. But Tulsi wasn't a normal politician. She was a warrior, and she'd come prepared for combat. "Let's talk about the Metropolitan Museum of Art Gala in September 2021, Tulsi continued, opening the folder with precise movements. "You attended wearing a designer gown with 'Tax the Rich' written across the back. Very dramatic, very Instagram-worthy. The images went viral, as I'm sure you remember." AOC's expression shifted from confidence to confusion. Where was this going? "What you didn't tell your working-class followers," Tulsi continued, her tone remaining professionally neutral, "was that you attended a $35,000 per ticket event while accepting thousands of dollars in free gifts. Designer clothes, designer shoes, professional hairstyling, professional makeup, luxury accommodations, all provided to you free of charge, all in violation of House ethics rules." She pulled out a specific document, holding it up so cameras could see the official House Ethics Committee letterhead. "This is the official report from the House Committee on Ethics, released July 25, 2025. After a 4-year investigation, they found that you, Congresswoman, impermissibly accepted gifts in violation of House rules and failed to pay full fair market value for goods and services received in connection with her 2021 Met Gala attendance." The studio had gone completely silent. Jake Tapper leaned forward, journalist instincts fully engaged now. This wasn't political theater anymore. This was documentation, evidence, the kind of thing that couldn't be spun away with emotional appeals. Tulsi continued, reading directly from the ethics report. "The investigation found that you received a custom-made designer gown valued at over $6,000, for which you paid less than half the actual cost. You received designer shoes that you promised to return but kept for months. You received professional hair styling services worth $477 that you didn't pay for until the stylist threatened legal action. You received professional makeup services worth $345 that remained unpaid for months. You received luxury hotel accommodations worth thousands of dollars. And you brought a guest whose $35,000 ticket was not covered under any exception in House rules." Each fact landed with precision. No emotion, no drama, just documented violations read in a calm, factual tone that made them even more devastating. "The Ethics Committee determined you violated federal ethics laws and House rules," Tulsi stated, looking up from the document directly at AOC. "They ordered you to pay an additional $2,983 to vendors to make up the difference between what you paid and what you should have paid. Money that, according to the latest public records, you still owe." AOC opened her mouth to respond, but Tulsi wasn't finished. "So let me make sure I understand your political brand correctly, Congresswoman. You attended a $35,000 per ticket celebrity event. You wore a dress saying, "Tax the rich," while personally accepting more in free gifts than many American families earn in a year. You underpaid working-class vendors, hair stylists, makeup artists, small business owners, and only paid them fully when ethics investigators forced you to. And somehow, you still position yourself as a champion of working people. The contrast was stark, devastating. AOC had built her entire political identity on being a voice for working-class Americans, and here was documented proof that she'd exploited working-class service providers while attending elite celebrity events. The hypocrisy wasn't alleged. It wasn't spin. It was officially documented by a bipartisan congressional ethics committee. Jake Tapper, sensing he needed to moderate, tried to interject. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, would you like to respond to?" But AOC was already talking, her voice rising with defensive indignation. "This is completely misleading. The Ethics Committee found no intentional wrongdoing. I was invited to the Met Gala as an elected official from New York representing my district's fashion industry. This is exactly the kind of sexist double standard that women in politics face. Male politicians attend events all the time without this level of scrutiny." "Congresswoman," Tulsi interrupted, her calm tone cutting through AOC's rising emotion like a blade, "the Ethics Committee specifically found that you impermissibly accepted gifts and violated House rules. That's not misleading. That's their conclusion after a 4-year investigation. And invoking sexism as a defense. I'm a woman who served in combat zones where the Taliban actively targeted female soldiers. Please don't lecture me about sexism when we're discussing documented ethics violations." The put-down was surgical. No raised voice. No emotion. Just facts delivered with the authority of someone who'd actually faced real discrimination and real danger, not manufactured outrage for social media. AOC's face flushed red. She was accustomed to controlling narratives through emotional appeals and by claiming victimhood. But those tactics don't work when your opponent has documentation and refuses to be distracted by performance. "The Ethics Committee cleared me of intentional wrongdoing," AOC repeated, trying to regain footing. "This was a good-faith effort to comply with complex rules. Every politician makes mistakes with gift reporting. This is being blown completely out of proportion to attack a progressive woman of color who threatens the establishment." But even as she spoke, AOC seemed to realize how weak it sounded, because Tulsi wasn't attacking her for being progressive or being a woman of color. She was pointing out specific, documented ethics violations. Facts don't care about your identity or your political ideology. Tulsi leaned forward slightly, her military bearing somehow making her more imposing even while seated. "Congresswoman, the Ethics Committee found you violated rules. They ordered you to pay nearly $3,000 to make vendors whole. These are facts. And if this was just about complex gift rules, why did it take you months to pay working-class vendors? Why did a hairstylist have to threaten legal action to get paid? Why did you only start paying these bills after the ethics investigation began?" Each question was precise, targeted, impossible to answer without revealing more problems. This was what interrogation training looked like. Back your opponent into corners where every response creates new vulnerabilities. "And here's what really matters," Tulsi continued, her voice taking on a tone of disappointment rather than anger. Somehow that made it more effective. "You wore a dress that said 'tax the rich' to generate social media attention. Mission accomplished, it went viral. But the actual working people who served you that night, the hairstylist, the makeup artist, the designers who created your outfit, you underpaid them, made them wait months for payment, only paid them fully when investigators forced you to. That's not championing working people, Congresswoman. That's exploiting them for Instagram content while living like the elites you claim to oppose." The moral condemnation was complete, and it was all based on official documentation from a bipartisan ethics investigation. Nothing classified. Nothing speculative, just facts that AOC couldn't deny because they'd been established by her own colleagues in Congress. Jake Tapper, realizing this had gone far beyond normal political debate, tried again to moderate. Director Gabbard, I think we should move on to. No, Jake, we're not done, Tulsi said firmly, her tone still professional but leaving no room for argument. The congresswoman called me dangerous. She called me a MAGA puppet. She questioned my integrity and my loyalty on your program. So the American people deserve to know the full picture of her ethics record before we move on. She reached back into her briefcase and withdrew another, thicker folder. AOC's eyes widened slightly. There was more. Let's discuss your use of taxpayer money, Congresswoman, Tulsi began, opening the new folder. Specifically, how you spend your member representational allowance. That's the taxpayer-funded budget every member of Congress receives for official business. She pulled out official House disbursement records, the kind that are publicly available but rarely examined in detail. In December 2024, you used your MRA to pay $3,700 to an individual named Juan D. Gonzalez for something described as dance training. You also paid $50 to a company called Bombazo Dance Co. Inc. for similar dance-related expenses. Both payments were listed as official congressional office expenditures. Tulsi looked up from the documents. Now, here's what's interesting. Investigative journalists tried to verify these payments. They couldn't find Juan D. Gonzalez in any Federal Election Commission records. They couldn't find Bombazo Dance Co. Inc. in standard federal databases. These entities don't appear to exist in any verifiable form. She let that information sink in for a moment. Americans for Public Trust filed an official ethics complaint alleging you misappropriated taxpayer funds for personal or campaign use disguised as office expenses. They pointed out that these payments appeared in your official House disbursements, which means they came from your taxpayer-funded office budget, not campaign funds. AOC tried to interrupt, but Tulsi continued with relentless precision. You responded on social media, and I'm quoting your exact tweet, 100% wrong. None of this is taxpayer money. This is an FEC filing. But Congresswoman, if these weren't taxpayer funds, they would have been reported to the FEC as campaign expenses. They weren't. They were in your official House disbursements for October through December 2024. That's literally the definition of taxpayer money. The contradiction was stark. AOC had publicly denied using taxpayer money, while the official congressional records showed exactly that. So which is it, Congresswoman? Tulsi asked, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer. Did you misuse taxpayer funds for personal dance training, or did you use your congressional office accounts to hide campaign expenses? Because both scenarios are violations of federal law. AOC's hands gripped the armrests of her chair. Her carefully constructed media persona was crumbling in real time. Those were legitimate office expenses that were properly categorized at the time. If there were any accounting errors, they've been corrected. This is a politically motivated. Accounting errors, Tulsi repeated, her voice dripping with skepticism. Congresswoman, this is a pattern. September 2021 Met Gala, accept gifts, underpay vendors, only comply when investigated. December 2024 taxpayer funds, make questionable payments to non-existent entities, deny its taxpayer money despite official records. Every time it's an error or misunderstanding or politically motivated attack. But federal ethics committees and watchdog groups keep finding violations. She leaned back slightly, her military bearing somehow making her judgment more authoritative. You position yourself as a champion of working Americans, an enemy of corruption, a fighter for transparency, but your actual conduct tells a different story. You accept luxury gifts while lecturing others about inequality. You underpay working-class vendors while preaching about worker rights. You make questionable payments with taxpayer money while demanding more government spending. You only follow ethics rules when investigations force you to. Each accusation was backed by documentation, official reports, public records, the kind of evidence that couldn't be dismissed as partisan attacks. That's not leadership, Congresswoman, Tulsi concluded. That's hypocrisy. And it's all documented in official investigations that you can't spin away with emotional tweets or Instagram posts. The studio was utterly silent. Even the camera operators had stopped moving. Everyone was watching a political execution happening in real time. not through speculation or partisan attacks, but through systematic presentation of documented evidence. AOC's face had gone through several color changes, red from anger, pale from shock, now flushed again with what looked like genuine distress. She wasn't used to this. Her entire career had been built on controlling narratives through social media, through emotional appeals, through claiming victimhood whenever challenged. But none of those tactics worked when your opponent had official documentation and refused to be distracted. You're using your position to weaponize government resources against a congresswoman who disagrees with Trump, AOC finally said, her voice cracking slightly. This is exactly the kind of authoritarian behavior we were warned about, using intelligence agencies to target political opponents. It was a desperate attempt to reframe the confrontation. Make it about Trump, about authoritarianism, about anything except the documented ethics violations. But Tulsi was ready for this deflection. She'd anticipated it, prepared for it, and she had the perfect response. "Congresswoman," Tulsi said, her voice taking on a tone of genuine bewilderment mixed with pity, "nothing I've presented is classified intelligence. These are public documents, House Ethics Committee reports, official congressional disbursement records, federal ethics complaints filed by public watchdog organizations. Anyone can access this information. It's literally available online for any American to read." She gestured at the folders spread before her. "I haven't used any intelligence resources. I haven't accessed any classified information. I've simply compiled publicly available records that document your pattern of ethics violations. The only reason this feels like an attack is because you're finally being held accountable on national television by someone who can't be intimidated or distracted by your performance tactics." Tulsi paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a darker edge. "But you mentioned intelligence resources, Congresswoman. Should we discuss what I found when I did use my authority as Director of National Intelligence?" AOC's eyes widened. The color drained from her face completely. What do you mean?" "I mean," Tulsi said slowly, deliberately, "that as DNI, I have access to financial intelligence databases that track international money movements. I have oversight of federal law enforcement investigations into financial crimes. I have security clearance to review any information relevant to national security, including financial patterns of elected officials that might suggest foreign influence or corruption." She reached into her briefcase one more time and withdrew a folder marked with classification stamps. Unlike the previous folders, this one wasn't opened. Tulsi simply held it, letting its existence speak for itself. "I've reviewed intelligence assessments about your foreign travel, Congresswoman, your communications with foreign nationals, your financial patterns, the sources of funding for your lifestyle that appears to exceed your congressional salary." Tulsi's voice was quiet, almost gentle, which somehow made it more threatening. "Now, I'm not going to declassify this information today. Unlike some politicians, I take my security responsibilities seriously. But I can tell you this. If the American people saw what's in this file, they would have serious questions about your activities." The threat was implicit but unmistakable. There was more, much more, information that AOC definitely didn't want public. Are you threatening me?" AOC whispered, and for the first time she sounded genuinely afraid rather than defensively indignant. "I'm informing you," Tulsi replied calmly, "that your attack on my integrity was based on zero evidence and lots of performance. Meanwhile, my assessment of your ethical failures is based on extensive official documentation, and yes, intelligence that raises legitimate questions about your financial activities." She leaned forward slightly. "That's not a threat, Congresswoman, that's a fact. You called me dangerous. You called me a puppet. You questioned my loyalty, all without any evidence. I've presented documented proof of your ethics violations using only public records. We're not the same." The contrast was complete. AOC had attacked with performance and rhetoric. Tulsi had responded with evidence and authority. One was a social media politician playing for viral moments. The other was a combat veteran who'd brought documentation to a theatrical performance. Jake Tapper, recognizing that this had transcended normal political debate and entered territory that might have actual legal implications, finally found his voice. Director Gabbard, are you suggesting there are ongoing investigations into Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez that you're aware of through your intelligence role? It was a good, journalistic question. Forced Tulsi to either back up the implication or back down. Tulsi turned to face Tapper directly. Jake, I'm saying that as DNI, I have access to financial intelligence and federal law enforcement information that all Americans should be able to trust is being used appropriately. I'm also saying that when a member of Congress attacks the integrity of intelligence leadership without evidence, while having their own documented pattern of ethics violations, that's relevant context the American people deserve to know. She didn't confirm ongoing investigations, but she didn't deny them either. The ambiguity was intentional, devastating, because now every viewer would wonder, what else does she know? What's in that classified folder? What hasn't been revealed yet? AOC looked like she might be sick. Her performance training had completely abandoned her. She was no longer the confident social media star who'd walked into the studio. She was a politician who'd just been systematically destroyed on national television and was realizing that fighting back would only make things worse. I think we should move on to other topics, AOC said weakly, looking at Jake Tapper with something approaching desperation. But Tulsi wasn't done, because warriors don't stop an attack when the enemy is weakened. They press until victory is complete. Actually, Congresswoman, there's one more thing we should discuss before we move on, Tulsi said, her tone almost conversational now, almost friendly, which somehow made it more ominous. Let's talk about your actual record of service, what you've accomplished for your constituents. She didn't need folders for this part. This was about facts everyone knew but rarely said out loud. You've been in Congress for 6 years. You represent New York's 14th District, parts of the Bronx and Queens, working-class neighborhoods, immigrant communities, people facing real economic struggles. Tulsi's tone was matter-of-fact. What major legislation have you passed that's become law? The question hung in the air, simple, direct, impossible to avoid. AOC opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I've been a leading voice on climate change, healthcare reform, economic justice. That's not what I asked, Tulsi interrupted gently. I asked what legislation you've passed that's become law, actual bills, actual accomplishments, things that materially helped your constituents beyond social media posts and viral moments. The silence was damning, because the answer was nothing significant. AOC had introduced legislation. She'd co-sponsored bills, but in 6 years she hadn't passed a single major piece of legislation that became law. Her entire impact had been cultural and rhetorical, not legislative. Your office's constituent service record is among the lowest in Congress, Tulsi continued, and now her tone carried genuine disappointment. You're terrible at casework, helping actual people solve problems with federal agencies. Why? Because casework doesn't go viral on Instagram. It's unglamorous work that doesn't build your celebrity brand. She let that sink in. Your district has some of the highest poverty rates in New York, but you've been more focused on national progressive causes than local issues. You've become a symbol for left-wing politics nationally, but your actual constituents, the people who elected you, they don't get magazine covers or cable news appearances. They get neglected while you chase viral moments. The critique was devastating because it was obviously true. Everyone knew AOC was better known for her social media presence than her legislative accomplishments. But saying it directly, on national television, with the authority of someone who'd actually served effectively in Congress, made it impossible to deny. I've served in Congress, Tulsi said quietly. 4 terms representing Hawaii's 2nd District. I know what the job requires: town halls, constituent services, actual legislation, showing up for your district even when cameras aren't rolling. You don't do that work, Congresswoman. You use your position as a platform for personal brand building. Your constituents deserve better. AOC tried one more deflection. I've been a leading voice for progressive values. I've helped shift the national conversation on social media," Tulsi finished. "You've built an Instagram following. That's not governing, that's not service, that's personal branding." The destruction was complete. Ethical violations, questionable finances, no legislative accomplishments, poor constituent service. Every dimension of AOC's political career had been systematically dismantled using only facts and official records. But Tulsi had one final blow to deliver. And this one would be personal. Because after destroying AOC's political credibility, she wanted to destroy the foundation of her moral authority. "Congresswoman, let me tell you about the difference between service and performance," Tulsi began, and her voice shifted to something deeper, more personal. This wasn't about documents anymore. This was testimony. In 2004, I deployed to Iraq with the Hawaii Army National Guard. I was 23 years old. I served in a medical unit providing combat support in a war zone. I've treated wounded soldiers under fire. I've held men as they died. I've provided medical care while taking enemy contact. That's what earned me a combat medical badge, treating wounded personnel while being engaged by the enemy. Her voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. The authority of someone who'd actually faced life and death, who'd actually sacrificed, who'd actually served. When I came home, I didn't create Instagram content about my service. I didn't stage photo opportunities at military bases. I didn't use my deployment as props for political theater. I just continued serving. As an officer, as a commander, as someone committed to protecting this country. I deployed to the Middle East again in 2008. I continued serving in the Army Reserve for 21 years, because service isn't about recognition or applause. It's about duty. She looked directly at AOC with something that looked almost like pity. "You've never served in uniform, Congresswoman. You've never put your life at risk for anyone. You've never sacrificed personal comfort for duty. And that's fine. Not everyone serves in the military. But don't lecture those of us who have about integrity and danger when you've never faced either." The moral weight was crushing, because this wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about character, about authenticity, about the difference between someone who'd actually sacrificed for their country and someone who'd built a career on performed activism. "You want to call me dangerous?" Tulsi's voice was soft but carried complete conviction. "I've served in combat zones. I've earned decorations for treating wounded soldiers under fire. I've spent 2 decades in uniform protecting this country. What have you done besides build an Instagram following?" The question demanded no answer, because the answer was obvious to everyone watching. "My combat medical badge can't be bought at a Met Gala, Congresswoman," Tulsi said quietly. "But your credibility seems to be for sale to anyone offering luxury gifts or celebrity event invitations." AOC's face crumpled, not theatrical tears, real distress. The kind that comes from being completely, utterly outmatched and knowing it. Tulsi stood, not aggressively but with the bearing of someone who'd won and knew it. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, you came on this show to attack me, to question my loyalty, to undermine the intelligence community's integrity. Instead, you've demonstrated exactly why Americans are losing faith in politicians." Her voice carried absolute moral authority. "You don't represent working people. You exploit their trust while living like a celebrity. You don't champion ethics. You violate rules and comply only when investigated. You don't serve your constituents. You use them as background for your political brand. You don't embody the revolutionary change you promise. You're just another politician gaming the system for personal benefit." She gathered her folders with military precision. "I've spent 21 years serving this country, not performing service for Instagram, not creating viral moments, actually serving in combat in Congress now as DNI. You've spent 6 years building a brand. We are not the same, and the American people deserve to know the difference." Tulsi walked off the set. No dramatic exit, no final zingers, just a combat veteran who delivered a mission briefing and had other work to do. The last image before the commercial break was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sitting alone at the desk, her confidence shattered, her brand destroyed, her credibility in ruins. The studio remained silent for a full 10 seconds after Tulsi left. No one moved. Jake Tapper sat frozen, his decades of journalistic experience completely inadequate for processing what had just happened. AOC stared at the empty chair beside her, unable to move, unable to speak, barely able to process the systematic destruction of her political identity that had just occurred on live television. In the control room, producers were in chaos, phones ringing, social media feeds exploding. The decision about whether to go to commercial had been made for them. They couldn't stay on this image of AOC in distress. But they also knew they'd just broadcast something unprecedented. This wasn't normal political combat. This was something else entirely. Finally, Jake Tapper found his voice. "Congresswoman, we need to go to commercial, but when we come back, I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond to Director Gabbard's allegations." AOC nodded numbly, and they cut to break. The commercial break lasted 3 minutes. In that time, the internet exploded. The first clips were already circulating. Tulsi destroys AOC started trending within 90 seconds. AOC exposed hit 1 million mentions in under 2 minutes. Conservative accounts were sharing frantically. Progressive accounts were scrambling to figure out how to defend the indefensible. But most tellingly, moderate and independent voters were reacting with shock at the documented evidence of ethics violations they hadn't known about. "My combat medical badge can't be bought at a Met Gala" was already becoming the quote of the year. Over 10 million people had watched it in the first 2 minutes. The combination of personal testimony and devastating put-down was too perfect, too authentic, too obviously true. In the studio, AOC's communications director had rushed to her side during the break, but there was nothing he could do. No talking points, no spin, no way to recover from what had just happened. AOC looked at him desperately. "What do I say?" He had no answer, because how do you respond to documented ethics violations? How do you spin a 4-year House Ethics Committee investigation that found you broke rules? How do you defend using taxpayer money for questionable payments? How do you counter a combat veteran questioning your service when you've never served? You can't. That was the problem. For the first time in her political career, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez faced a situation where her performance tactics, her emotional appeals, her claims of victimhood, none of it would work. She was trapped. When they came back from commercial, Jake Tapper tried to be fair. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, Director Gabbard made serious allegations about your ethics record and your conduct in office. I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond." It was a lifeline, a chance to recover some dignity, but AOC was too shaken to take it effectively. "What you just witnessed," she began, her voice lacking its usual confidence, "was a coordinated attack on a progressive congresswoman using the power of intelligence agencies. Director Gabbard used her position to weaponize government resources against someone who disagrees with the Trump administration." But even as the words came out, they sounded hollow, because everyone had just watched Tulsi use only public documents, House Ethics Committee reports, congressional disbursement records, federal watchdog complaints, nothing classified, nothing from intelligence agencies, just publicly available facts that documented AOC's violations. Jake pressed gently. "But Congresswoman, Director Gabbard primarily cited a House Ethics Committee investigation that found you did violate gift rules. That's not intelligence agency overreach. That's your colleagues in Congress investigating ethics complaints." AOC's frustration was visible. "The committee found no intentional wrongdoing. I made good faith efforts to comply with complex gift rules. Every politician has these issues. This is being weaponized because I'm a progressive woman of color who threatens the establishment." The deflection tactics were all there. Complexity, good faith, weaponization, identity. But they weren't working because the facts were too clear, too documented, too obviously true. "What about the payments for dance training using your congressional office budget?" Tapper asked, journalist instincts driving him to follow up on the most damaging revelation. Director Gabbard said those payments were to entities that don't exist in federal databases, and that you claimed they weren't taxpayer funds when official records show they were. AOC stammered. Those were legitimate office expenses that were properly. If there was any miscategorization, it's been corrected. These are accounting issues that every congressional office deals with. But you specifically tweeted that they weren't taxpayer funds, Tapper persisted. Yet they appeared in your official House disbursements, which by definition are taxpayer funded. I was referring to the broader context of campaign versus official. Look, this is being blown out of proportion by right-wing media to attack a progressive voice. Every answer made it worse. Because AOC was trying to use tactics that work on social media, deflection, reframing, appeals to identity, but they don't work when a journalist has specific questions about documented facts. Online, the reaction was brutal. Even progressive commentators were struggling to defend her. She's not answering the questions became a common observation. The ethics violations are real was repeated across political spectrum. She can't spin her way out of official committee findings, captured the core problem. The comparison to Tulsi was everywhere. Combat veteran versus social media star. Documented service versus performed activism. Evidence-based accusations versus rhetorical attacks. Authentic sacrifice versus celebrity politics. Every contrast favored Tulsi. Every comparison made AOC look worse. But it was the personal testimony about military service that was resonating most powerfully. Veterans organizations started sharing the clip of Tulsi describing treating wounded soldiers under fire, then asking AOC what she'd done besides build an Instagram following. That particular exchange was being called the most devastating moment in political television history by commentators across the spectrum. Because it wasn't about politics, it was about character. It was about authenticity. It was about the difference between someone who genuinely sacrificed for their country and someone who'd built a brand on performed activism. And that difference had been exposed with brutal clarity. AOC struggled through the rest of the program, but nothing she said changed the narrative. She tried to pivot to policy. She tried to attack Trump. She tried to claim victimhood. Nothing worked. The damage was done. Complete. Irreversible. When the show finally ended, AOC left the studio quickly, ignoring reporters shouting questions. Her communications team surrounded her, but their faces showed they knew this was catastrophic. There was no spin for this. No recovery plan. No way to undo what millions of people had just watched. Within hours, the political consequences began. The House Ethics Committee announced they were reopening their investigation into AOC's office expenditures, specifically the payments for dance training to entities that couldn't be verified. The publicity from the CNN confrontation had forced their hand. They couldn't ignore the questionable payments anymore. Americans for Public Trust filed an expanded ethics complaint, this time including formal criminal referrals to the Department of Justice, alleging potential fraud and misuse of taxpayer funds. With video of AOC's contradictory statements now public, the complaint gained serious traction. A coalition of government watchdog groups, some progressive, some conservative, some nonpartisan, demanded a complete audit of AOC's campaign finances, office expenses, and gift disclosures since taking office in 2019. They cited patterns of ethical violations and suspicious financial behavior that warrant comprehensive investigation. AOC's office released a statement calling it all coordinated right-wing attacks, but the defense didn't work anymore. Because the House Ethics Committee was bipartisan. Because Americans for Public Trust had filed complaints about Democrats and Republicans. Because some of the watchdog groups demanding investigation were progressive organizations. This wasn't partisan. This was accountability. More politically damaging, within 24 hours, 3 primary challengers announced campaigns against AOC for her 2026 re-election. All 3 were progressives from her district. All 3 explicitly cited her ethics violations, her lack of accountability, and her betrayal of working-class values. We need a representative who serves the community, not builds a celebrity brand, became their common message. The Democratic Socialists of America, which had already withdrawn their endorsement months earlier, issued a stronger statement. We cannot support candidates who violate ethics rules while claiming to fight corruption. Representative Ocasio-Cortez has prioritized personal brand over movement building. We deserve better leadership. Even more ominous for AOC's future, her progressive allies in Congress stayed silent. No one rushed to her defense. No one denounced the attacks as partisan. Representative Jamal Bowman, one of her closest squad allies, notably refused to comment. Representative Rashida Tlaib gave only a carefully worded statement about everyone being accountable to ethics rules. Representative Ilhan Omar said nothing at all. The silence spoke volumes. AOC had become politically toxic. No one wanted to be associated with defending someone who had documented ethics violations, who had been exposed for hypocrisy on national television, who had been systematically destroyed by a combat veteran using only facts. Conservative media ran the clips endlessly, but they barely needed commentary. The confrontation spoke for itself. Fox News played the "My Combat Medical Badge Can't Be Bought at a Met Gala" exchange on loop. Newsmax focused on the documented ethics violations. OAN highlighted the questionable taxpayer expenditures. But more significantly, mainstream and even progressive outlets couldn't find ways to defend AOC. CNN's post-show analysis included their own national security analysts praising Tulsi's use of only public documents and factual evidence. MSNBC's coverage included progressives admitting the ethics violations were deeply problematic. Even outlets sympathetic to AOC acknowledged she'd been thoroughly outmatched and unable to defend against documented allegations. The Hill, Axios, and Politico ran straight factual reporting. House Ethics Committee found Ocasio-Cortez violated gift rules. Representative ordered to pay $2,983 for Met Gala violations. Watchdog groups file criminal referral over taxpayer-funded payments. DSA withdraws support citing ethical accountability. When even neutral fact-checking outlets couldn't find angles to defend her, AOC's political future looked grim. Because this wasn't about spin or narrative. This was about documented violations, official committee findings, and a confrontation that exposed the gap between her brand and her reality. The social media reaction crystallized within 48 hours into a clear consensus that crossed party lines. AOC had been exposed as a hypocrite. She preached about taxing the rich while accepting luxury gifts from them. She championed workers while underpaying working-class vendors. She attacked corruption while violating ethics rules herself. She built a brand on revolutionary change while accomplishing nothing legislative. She claimed to serve her constituents while focusing on her celebrity. And when confronted by someone who'd actually served, actually sacrificed, actually earned her authority through combat, the contrast was devastating. "I used to follow AOC religiously," became a common refrain across social media. "But after seeing the documented evidence, I feel betrayed. I voted for her twice, but she's not who I thought she was." The difference between her and Tulsi Gabbard was impossible to ignore. The most viral posts weren't partisan attacks. They were expressions of disappointment from former supporters who felt lied to. Young progressives who'd believed AOC represented authentic change, confronting evidence that she'd been performing activism while violating the exact principles she claimed to champion. Within a week, polling showed the damage was catastrophic and possibly permanent. AOC's favorability rating dropped 23 points among all voters. More troubling for her political survival, it dropped 18 points among Democratic voters and 15 points among progressive voters specifically. Even her core supporters were abandoning her. In her own district, NY14, her approval rating fell from 64% to 41% in 1 week. Constituent surveys showed voters felt she'd been more focused on national fame than local service, that her ethics violations were disqualifying, and that they wanted someone who practices what they preach. For the first time since her shocking primary victory in 2018, AOC's re-election was genuinely in doubt. The three primary challengers were polling competitively. Her district wanted change. And the irony was perfect. The politician who'd built a career on being the change candidate was now the establishment incumbent being challenged by activists demanding authentic service over celebrity performance. The investigations expanded. The House Ethics Committee's reopened probe had broader scope, examining not just the dance training payments but all of AOC's office expenditures since 2019. Federal investigators subpoenaed financial records. The IRS reviewed her tax filings looking for unreported income or gifts. Campaign finance experts analyzed whether her lifestyle matched her disclosed income. Each new investigation generated headlines. Each headline reminded Americans of what they'd watched happen on CNN. AOC's office became siege headquarters. Staff stopped answering media calls except with prepared statements. Her communications director resigned after 2 weeks, unable to handle the constant crisis. Her social media presence, once her greatest strength, became a liability. Every post generated ratioed responses reminding her of the ethics violations. Her Instagram stories, once viewed by millions, saw engagement drop 60%. Her tweets, once guaranteed to go viral, barely generated traction. The algorithm had turned against her because users had turned against her. Town halls in her district became hostile environments. Constituents demanded answers about the ethics violations, shouted questions about why she'd underpaid working-class vendors, asked why she'd used taxpayer money for dance training, confronted her about prioritizing celebrity over service. AOC, who'd always been confident in public appearances, started avoiding uncontrolled environments, stopped doing open town halls, stuck to friendly media appearances. But that retreat only reinforced the narrative that she couldn't defend her record. 6 months after the CNN confrontation, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was still in Congress, but barely. Her power had evaporated. Her influence was gone. Her brand was destroyed. She'd gone from the most prominent voice in progressive politics to a cautionary tale about celebrity politicians. The member of Congress who'd once commanded attention with every tweet now struggled to get media coverage for actual legislative work. Her committee assignments were reduced after Democrats quietly shuffled her off high-profile positions. Her progressive caucus marginalized her, uncomfortable with the ethics cloud. Her national fundraising dried up as donors didn't want association with scandal. Even her social media following, once her greatest asset, had become mostly hostile, bots and critics outnumbering genuine supporters. Most devastatingly, her constituents had turned on her. The progressive activists who'd elevated her in 2018 were now organizing against her. Community leaders who championed her were endorsing primary challengers. Working-class voters who'd believed her promises about fighting for them felt betrayed by evidence she'd exploited working-class vendors while accepting elite gifts. "She's not one of us," became the refrain in the Bronx and Queens. She never was. She used us to build her brand. The betrayal felt personal because AOC had so effectively positioned herself as an authentic voice of working people. When that authenticity was exposed as performance, the backlash was severe. But the impact went beyond AOC personally. The confrontation with Tulsi Gabbard had become a cultural watershed, a defining moment that changed how Americans viewed politicians. It represented the collision between two types of political figures, the authentic servant versus the celebrity performer. And when forced into direct confrontation, with no PR teams to filter the exchange, no social media algorithms to control the narrative, just two women and documented facts, the difference had been undeniable. Young voters who'd idolized AOC's social media presence started asking harder questions about substance. What has she actually accomplished? What legislation has she passed? How has she helped her district? The answers were disappointing. She'd mastered looking revolutionary while achieving very little actual change. She'd built a massive platform without using it to deliver results. The era of celebrity politicians dominating through performance rather than substance was ending. And it ended because a combat veteran with integrity decided to hold one accountable with facts, evidence, and moral authority. Voters started demanding more than viral moments. They wanted actual service, actual results, actual accountability. Politicians who'd modeled themselves after AOC's approach suddenly found it less effective. The performance politics playbook had been exposed. For Tulsi Gabbard, the aftermath brought complete vindication. Every attack against her nomination, accusations of being a Russian asset, questions about loyalty, concerns about intelligence experience, evaporated when Americans watched her systematically, professionally, factually dismantle a political opponent using only documented evidence while maintaining perfect composure. She demonstrated exactly what America needed from intelligence leadership: someone with unquestionable integrity, someone who couldn't be intimidated, someone who dealt in facts rather than spin, someone who'd actually served and sacrificed for their country. Her approval rating as DNI jumped 18 points across all demographics. Republicans who'd never trusted Democrats praised her. Democrats who'd opposed her nomination admitted she'd handled the confrontation with remarkable professionalism. Independents appreciated finally seeing a politician who backed up their words with evidence. The intelligence community rallied around her. Career professionals appreciated having a leader who defended them against baseless political attacks while maintaining strict adherence to classified information protocols. She'd been attacked as dangerous, responded with documented facts about her accuser, and done it all without compromising a single piece of classified intelligence. Perfect execution. More broadly, Tulsi's handling of AOC established a new standard for political accountability. She'd shown that politicians who build careers on attacking others should be prepared for equal scrutiny. That celebrity status doesn't exempt anyone from ethical responsibility. That performance is no substitute for substance. That combat veterans who have actually served have moral authority that Instagram politicians can't match. 6 months after the confrontation, when testifying before Congress about intelligence priorities, a Democratic representative tried one final attack. Director Gabbard, some have criticized your public confrontation with Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez as inappropriate use of your position. Tulsi's response was perfect. Representative, I used publicly available ethics reports and federal documents to respond to personal attacks on my integrity and that of the intelligence community I lead. I will always defend the professionals who serve this country when politicians attack them unfairly with baseless accusations. If that makes me controversial, I accept that. But I won't apologize for holding politicians accountable when they question my loyalty without evidence, while having documented ethics violations themselves. The exchange went viral again, but this time as an example of principled leadership rather than combat, standing firm, refusing to back down, defending the intelligence community, using facts instead of rhetoric, everything Americans wanted from their leaders. The contrast with AOC couldn't have been starker. One woman destroyed by documented evidence of hypocrisy, another elevated by demonstrating authentic integrity under attack, one relegated to political irrelevance, another praised across the political spectrum as an example of real leadership. 1 year after the confrontation, the cultural shift was undeniable. Polling showed 67% of Americans wanted more leaders with military service records like Tulsi Gabbard. 71% believed social media politicians were less trustworthy than those with government experience. 58% said the Tulsi-AOC confrontation had restored some faith in political accountability. Performance politics was losing ground to authentic service. And it happened because one warrior decided to fight back when attacked, with evidence, precision, moral authority, and won decisively. The lesson was clear and it resonated across America. You can build a political brand on social media. You can master viral moments and celebrity politics. You can look like a revolutionary while accomplishing nothing. But eventually, you'll face someone who demands accountability, someone who has facts instead of performance, someone who's actually served instead of just talked about service. And when that confrontation happens, all the Instagram followers in the world won't save you from documented evidence and authentic moral authority. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez learned that lesson on national television. She'd attack someone she thought was vulnerable, someone she thought couldn't fight back, someone she thought would be bound by protocols and restraint. She was catastrophically wrong, because Tulsi Gabbard wasn't a typical politician. She was a warrior, and warriors don't lose confrontations they're prepared for. They finish them. The final image that defined the confrontation wasn't from the broadcast itself. It was from 3 months later, a photograph captured at a congressional hearing. AOC sitting alone at a witness table, looking diminished and uncertain. In the background, barely visible but unmistakable, Tulsi Gabbard standing in full military dress uniform, testifying about intelligence operations. The symbolism was perfect. The social media politician reduced and isolated. The combat veteran standing tall in uniform, serving with distinction. That image circulated widely with a simple caption that captured everything. Performance versus substance. 2 words that explained the entire confrontation. 2 words that defined why one woman's career was destroyed while the other's was elevated. 2 words that represented a cultural shift in what Americans valued in their leaders. If you made it this far, you've witnessed something extraordinary. A decorated combat veteran systematically dismantling a celebrity politician using nothing but facts, evidence, and moral authority earned through actual sacrifice. Smash that like button if you think more politicians need to be held accountable exactly like this. Subscribe to this channel because we're committed to exposing the truth about political theater versus authentic service. Share this story everywhere before the narrative gets rewritten. Comment below and let me know. Should AOC resign from Congress? Should all politicians' ethics records be examined this thoroughly? Who else needs to be investigated with this level of scrutiny? Did Tulsi go too far, or was this exactly what needed to happen? Turn on notifications because when real patriots stand up to fraudulent politicians, you need to see it. This story proves several critical truths. Social media following means nothing when your record is examined by someone with actual authority and access to evidence. Celebrity politicians who build brands instead of serving constituents will eventually be exposed. Combat veterans who have sacrificed for their country have moral authority that no amount of Instagram posts can match. Americans are hungry for authentic accountability, not political theater. When warriors face frauds in direct confrontation, there's never any doubt about who wins. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thought her social media army would protect her, thought her progressive credentials would shield her, thought she could attack the director of national intelligence with 0 consequences. She was catastrophically wrong. Tulsi Gabbard proved that when you attack someone with actual integrity, actual evidence, and actual authority, you get destroyed. This is what happens when performance meets substance, when theater meets reality, when America remembers what real leadership looks like. God bless our combat veterans. God bless intelligence professionals who serve with integrity. God bless everyone who believes authentic service matters more than viral moments. The era of celebrity politicians is ending, and it ended because one warrior decided to fight back with facts, evidence, and absolute moral authority, and America watched her win.